was way too much effort. We're recording. All right. This is discussing the migration to create vulnerabilities records. And we were discussing specifically whether or not we wanted to within this migration do the update to set vulnerabilities to dismissed. And I think we do. I think Matt might say like that's the most important part of this migration, because like for a lot of the projects, you know, they might have dismissed a bunch in the past, and then we move them over, and then they would have to manually redo that. Now, whether it needs to be done as part of this migration or not is, you know, is up for discussion, certainly.
Well, if it's important, important from product point of view, I guess we can just leave it because it's not slowing it down. It will just increase the overall time because we need to like schedule it for more projects, and some project will need just this part. But then if we have to do another, if we have to do it in another merge request and another background migration, you have to go through the whole process, like creating merge requests, going through review, getting it merged, deployed. So it will be sometime in the future. So I guess in this case, it's fine to just leave it here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that was my only question, was if everyone is comfortable with the performance of it, and that doesn't seem to be a risk, then what Ross said is accurate. The dismissal state, making sure that we persist that is a top concern, because we have, I mean, I think the top project, it was something crazy, like 290,000 vulnerability findings on a project. Most of them are not like that, but I think the average was in the mid, you know, thousands range. So if people may end up having hundreds or several thousand dismissed vulnerabilities showing back up, they're not going to be very happy. So that's why it's such a top concern.
Do you know which project is this one with, like, do you know the project with the top numbers?
No, Wayne Haber ran some metrics on that and pulled that out. I mean, that's an extreme outlier, but it's, I think there were a number of projects that had thousands or tens of thousands of items in there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I would like to check the numbers for some of these projects, because like when you do it in a single update, we usually try to keep this short, because like long lasting updates will lock all those records and like up like all sort of pressure to the database. So I've been checking for the project that I used to check everything with this merge request, which is the project with most vulnerabilities to be migrated. But that probably doesn't mean it's the project with the top, like the top project with vulnerabilities to be dismissed. So if you can flick some, you or Ross, if you can give me some project IDs, I just will do a quick check for these two. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely look. I mean, a lot of times we do use the main GitLab project as as a quick benchmark or whatever against a lot of things, and that one doesn't need to be do the full migration, but it will need to do the you know, update dismissal part of the migration. So
okay, so I can use the GitLab project to check this.
Yeah.
Okay,
but again, like I don't know if it's the biggest outlier or not, but it's usually a good representation of a project that has a lot of data. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll actually look at the criteria we have in that update and try to figure out how I can find one with a lot of this. Like just do a select or something. Okay, I'll do this and we'll post a comment later. But for now, let's. Like this, we decide on leave it there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
I mean, you kind of put together a checklist at the bottom of the merge request. Do you want to kind of just go over that? You want me to like share my screen?
I did. Yeah, I did another round of review yesterday, and I think it's looking good now. And the solution that we're working on looks like viable, and we're getting closer. We just need to cover all these points that I found. So, and that will be ready to pass it to a maintainer, which supposedly will be a quick turnaround after all this, but who knows? And I've been running a lot. I've been running a lot of the queries manually for that top project, and the execution times for all of them look pretty good. So it's totally acceptable, and I think it will be fine. So do you want me to share my screen or share yours and go
Sure.
through?
Yeah, you can share it. That's great. And I guess if we're like top loading for stuff that's going to be relevant to Matt, the delay interval, you know, so like I tried to do 20 seconds and you said the minimum is 2 minutes, which, you know, that's, you know, totally fair. But that will, you know, make the overall duration longer. I don't think we necessarily
problem.
I don't think so, but I wanted to bring that up to Matt to check on that.
Okay, so
yeah, could you help me quantify what that is?
Just to give you some context, the minimum, we set a delay between each background migration, which is background job, so that we give the database to recover from the potential load and the stress it was put on, and give like process like out to vacuum to clean up all the like whatever's left over from the work that was done in the each job. And I don't know why 2 minutes, it's always been there, so it's probably some empirical value. And basically it means if we go with 2 minutes between each job, which is 2 minutes between each project, we have like 5,500 projects relatively. So the whole thing will finish for like 7 days since it starts. And yeah, I'm right. And the work that's done. So the idea is that each job runs, and it's enough time between this job and the next job to like give the database some space. And with the current approach, I think we'll probably like the project with the most vulnerabilities to be created is like around 100K. And if we do them in batches of 10K, and each batch is like relatively maybe around a second something. So I don't know, probably the longest for that project, the top time it will take to migrate everything will be like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something, give or take. So we'll have, with 2 minutes, there will be enough of time left for it before the next job starts. So yeah, but the basic numbers are with 2 minutes, it will take 7 days to complete the whole thing, which for background migration is something that's like normal and acceptable. I don't know what's your, like the product point of view.
Well, I guess if that's the way that we need to do the intervals on that, I would wonder, is there a way that we can target ones that have or sequence the highest number of dismissed vulnerabilities first? Because if people have a handful, I'm less concerned about that, and I'm wondering if it's less of an even distribution and more just kind of a, you know, 10% are going to have the majority of the dismissed vulnerabilities and the rest are just going to have a handful. So that may alleviate that. I would like to at least get the majority of them done within, you know, like the first day or two post-release would be awesome. The ones that have a significant amount.
Well, I don't know. It might be possible, but then when you start adding new like sorting and stuff like this, it may affect the execution time, and that migration, that the scheduling one that is doing the scheduling, it's pretty much done at the moment. So I've checked it. I even run manually all the batches and the queries to make sure it will it executes fast. So if we change it, we have to go to that process again, and we may hit a problem because suddenly if you are some sorting, everything may go like may start being complete like very slow and timing out. So who knows? I'll take a look, but I can't answer this now. So and we've never done this like I don't at least I've never seen it like done it in a way that we target some cohort of projects or users like to be done first. We just do them all usually we sort them by ID because that's the fastest and that's how it works best. But yeah, I get your point, and I'll try to see can we do this or not. So it's not about the number of vulnerabilities to be migrated, but the number of vulnerabilities to be dismissed.
Russ, I'm going to look for you to agree with that, but I think that that's accurate because the vulnerabilities, if they rerun it, will just convert from the old model to the new standalone vulnerability objects. It's just the persistence of things that were already identified and dismissed, like as a, maybe it's a false positive, maybe it is a low priority or something that doesn't apply. It's that extra step that they've already taken that we want to avoid for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree, like with that, being more of a priority. I mean, to me, like, if they've been dismissing stuff, it's more likely that they're using the actual tool. I mean, I have no idea like what the data looks like, but I have a suspicion that maybe some of these projects that we're going to be migrating like to the new vulnerabilities, we're doing that because they're dead projects and they're not actually using them anymore. They're just sitting around. So like they don't necessarily care as much about having those projects migrated over as active projects that they're working on, having the dismissals moved over. But again, I don't have enough visibility in the data to like be absolutely confident about that.
Okay, so I can try to look at this, but just keep in mind that I don't have all the context you have about like why are we actually doing this, and all I'm looking is like from the database side, like is it going to explode or not? That's pretty much my concern. So sometimes I may miss something. So but at the same time I have access to the database replicas and I can run like queries to check the data. So if you can help me with that, so we can check it. So, okay, so the two options we have is to try to prioritize some of the project first. And the other option is like that, I mean like that these 2 minutes are just like recommendation that we have. And we can always try to, let's say, make it 1 minute, which will bring the total time from 7 days to just 3.5 days. And explain why we want to do this, and then leave it to the maintainer to approve or not. Like if we can show data that each job will take no more than like 20 or 30 seconds, and then we'll have another 30 seconds to recover, then 1 minute might be acceptable. So that's something that we may also give a try. But let's first see can we prioritize them or not, and then we can try to lower the delay between jobs. So the next, okay, let's go one by one. So the first one is just a technical detail. It's minor. We just need to match them the data type, because if for some reason we've exceeded the integer range, which I don't think it's likely, it will just fail to save that data. We just talked about the delay interval. So first we do the insert and then we do the updates. Ross, do you think we should do this in transactions? So if one of them fails, the other is rolled back too, or it makes sense to keep the previous one even if the later fails? That's about the saving the occurrence ID in that temporary column that we have.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I guess, yeah, sorry, I kind of missed some of the nuance in that when you originally posted it. But like originally we were going to try and do it in a CTE, so it was doing the insert and the update in one statement,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah,
would
but
be
that,
like one statement altogether. But that's not going to work. So yeah, I think we should do this in a transaction. So if it does fail, I mean, we can, if we do the insert, we have the data to do the update that we could recover from, but I think it's probably ideal to just do it in a
Okay,
transaction.
so cool. Let's do it that way. And just for a context, because it's like a sidekick job, if it fails, I think it will gonna be retried 2 or 3 more times before it's like given up. So it's a chance that next one will. Yeah, this one is also technical detail. That update will need some indices to make it faster. We just need to add them. I did some. I've tried, and I think we just need two specific indexes that will drop later when everything is done. We talked about the dismissal. Yeah, go.
So on the index that needs to be added, I can just add those in that other migration where I'm adding the ID as well.
Yeah, the one that's adding the column, you can also create the indexes, and
Okay.
they're pretty fast, at least on database like when I've tried them. Well, I'm not sure. I'll have to check, because if we do them with they may require disabling the DDL transaction, which means that the adding of a column will not be in transaction. So it might be safer to just do it in a separate migration, but that's just a detail, I think. If you, in cases like this, if you wonder, then just doing it in a separate migration is safer and more acceptable.
Okay.
Because like in this case, you can target all everything around it to the specific change you're doing, while when you're combining changes in single migration, like one may require disable DDL transactions, the other not, and it's trickier to reason about rollback, because one of the change could be made and it was not in transaction, something failed, it's not rollback, and if you want to rerun the migration, it will fail because the first one is already done. So usually separate migration is safer, and it's not changing the amount of work to be done anyway significantly. We talked about the dismissal, that we'll keep it here for now. We need to add a simple test for the scheduling migrations. There are many examples in the code base, and it's pretty much to make sure that it's scheduling what you're expecting it to schedule.
Okay.
And the last one, it's like a kind of paperwork one. When everything is done and we know what's going on, it will be good to update the merge request description with every query that we're gonna run, an execution plan, and anything. And the goal of this is so that it decrease time for the next round of maintainer review. Because if it's not there, and usually a lot of the threads and discussions at that time are resolved and collapsed, and the maintainers don't see them. So it's pretty much, if it's not there, they'll ask for it, and then you have another delay that could be avoided.
Absolutely, yeah. The what I have in the description is very out of date.
Yeah, because
I think
sometimes, like in this case, the things change a lot, and we may try a few different approaches, and it's hard to keep track, to keep the description up to date, and sometimes it doesn't make sense because you're not even sure that we're gonna work. So let's just make sure when we're ready to update this. And that's pretty much it. And from the look of it, the most important thing we need to think about is the delay interval, and can we target specific projects first or not? And if not, try with a shorter interval, like 1 minute, because Matt, is like 3.5 days more acceptable? Because in the I don't know how urgent is that whole thing, but I don't know. To me, it seems fine because 3 days sooner or later.
Yeah, I think 3.5 days is a lot more. I'd be a lot more comfortable with that. I'm sure there's going to be some projects where it affects them, and it's potentially an issue. But actually, I guess one thing I didn't think to ask. So, what happens in the case of, let's say that I am one of these projects where on day one I run the pipeline, nothing has been migrated. I had 500 dismissed vulnerabilities. All those are going to show up when I run my next pipeline. But then let's say a couple days later, the background job gets to my project. Is it still going to update those findings, the old findings, the dismissal status, and apply those for my next subsequent pipeline run? Or is it just, if we don't migrate them to begin with, it's gone forever?
This migration, as far as the dismissals, is set up in such a way that it can be reran, like that logic can be reran as many times as we want. I mean, we might need to do it in a different migration in the future or something like that, but it can be reran. So we can, if something falls through the cracks, we can update it. Yes. Under that scenario that you mentioned, like they should get updated just fine. Like they will get caught up. One thing that you're asking around, you didn't quite say the exact thing that could happen, but you got really close. In that, like, so we roll out this migration, the migration finishes, and then somebody else like runs a new pipeline and merge that in and create new, they dismiss stuff in the pipeline, right? And then they merge it into their branch and it shows up on the dashboard. A new vulnerability is going to be created, but it won't be dismissed yet. We do have work for that. I believe Mihal is assigned to that. But if this goes out, if this MR goes out without his MR, there is the potential for, some of those projects to have dismissals left behind, if that makes sense. But that's not necessarily a concern of this discussion.
Yeah, I guess in that case, and maybe this is a terrible assumption, they would be running pipelines against a project that had likely already been around for a while. So I would think that any new additional discoveries and dismissals would be small, hopefully
yes.
Single digits. So we're not talking about the entire history of their entire scan history. So in that scenario that somebody runs a pipeline and generates these new standalone vulnerabilities before the update gets to their project, if when the update eventually runs a few days later, all of a sudden all those dismissed things sort of reappear as dismissed vulnerabilities, I think that's fine. And that's actually really easy to message around, like, hey, we're having to do a big migration of all the projects. If you have a lot of stuff that's dismissed, you may not see the update for a few days. Don't worry, it'll get there eventually, kind of thing. I think that's actually pretty okay.
Okay.
And ultimately, if the maintainers push back and it has to be 2 minutes, the messaging is the same. It's going to potentially inconvenience people a little bit longer, but I think it'd be okay.
Are all your projects like the important customers project on .com, or some of them are self-managed?
Most of the ones, there is one customer in particular that we are really, really pushing hard to get this out for 12.10, and that customer is self-managed.
Okay, because that's very different, because all these numbers, 7 days are for .com, and for like we never have a way to actually know what's the case for self-managed, but usually the data there is like where like they have like way less projects and everything, so those background migration can run for a day for them or for like hours even, because it depends on the size of their instance.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know the specifics of this particular customer setup, but what's interesting is that they build custom applications for clients. So they're, I would think of the people that we typically deal with, probably more likely to have a larger database instance because they have, I don't know, dozens, maybe hundreds of people that they build applications for, and they're all managed in GitLab. But in any case,
Okay.
I doubt it's thousands. It's probably not 5,500 or anywhere close to that.
Yeah. And in the past, when we had background migration, we were including like a paragraph in the release post about how you can check for yourself what's the estimate, because you just need to run the query that we do and then multiply by delay and figure out how long it will take for you. So if you have a more direct line with that customer, you can ask them to check and see is this like okay for them, like at least they will know when it will finish for them.
Okay, that's good to know.
But yeah, usually the assumption is that all these numbers are way lower for self-managed. I can't imagine that someone will beat .com in scale. Even like big customers like, let's say, Siemens or the other big ones are usually way smaller than .com. Cool. So it sounds like might be good even with 2 minutes, but I'll still check, can we target specific projects in some way?
Yeah, I would still say let's try to push for one just to see. It's not worth fighting a big fight over. So if it gets shut down, but if we can get a minute, I think that would be preferable.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll keep this in mind. Well, is there anything else? Ross, do you have any questions on my last round of review from yesterday? Or do you need
Nope.
any help with that?
Nope.
Okay.
I saw your checklist for the meeting, but I didn't see your other comments until just before the meeting, so I didn't have a chance to work on them. But I did look them over, and I mean, they all make sense and everything. So I'm
Well,
good
yeah,
to go.
this is the checklist is like the checklist is like a resume of all the other stuff that's scattered around. That's why I put it in one place. But I think that if we cover all this, and pretty much all of them are pretty just needs to be done. There is nothing like unknown about it. We will be fine to. I guess the most it will take for you is to update the description at the end before we pass it to a maintainer.
the paperwork.
We have a lot of these execution plans and queries, and because you can do the execution plan in database lab, but you can't find the start and stop ID for the batches. But I did this, and we have the numbers around the comments. And also, if you need, if you can't find it, just ping me, and I can give you numbers or run the query for you. So just to make this faster.
Excellent. Yeah. I saw your queries in database lab. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't have any more. Thank you for syncing.
Cool.
Very helpful.
Yep. Thank you. See ya.
Yeah. See.